Hello everyone, welcome. In this video, let's keep talking about what happens after white plays this attachment. I'll just introduce a couple of trick moves, I guess. Maybe not so tricky, they're a little more advanced, and you may not want to try these moves. But of course, let's take a look together. So one so-called trick move is cutting here. Doesn't seem like a good move, right? Even if white pulls it off, it's not going to be very fancy, right? Black is going to kill number 3, right? So the intuitive move is number 4. But this will get into a very similar situation as a variation we saw last time when black placed the honey on the outside, right? So this is actually very similar. It seems like white is all dead, but actually no, white is very resilient. If black captures here, then once again, we'll have a situation where black is actually short on liberties, these 2 stones here, and you can only play this honey on the second line. And after all these exchanges, white actually shifts to the upper side, has a very strong shape, black gets the corner. And this is totally playable for white. This will benefit white slightly, right? So that's really the goal, I think, of this so-called trick move. But I think most amateur players can live with this pattern as black in this situation, right? So I'm not too concerned about you not being able to handle this so-called trick move. But this is what white wants, right? Shifting to the upper side by playing the cut. But if you already want to shift to the upper side, we have this Josekis that we talked about previously, right? So, right, this is also shifting to the upper side, but of course you can say the pattern we just saw earlier is a stronger pattern for white. Well, that makes sense as well. So what should black do if you don't want to give white the upper side? You play this Atari first, right? White must extend, right? White cannot give up number 1 and live on a corner, as we said before. And now what happens is that black plays another Atari. White must extend. Again, you need to extend, even though these 2 stones will be dead. There will be aji, right? So we can use these 2 stones in the future to put pressure on these 2 black groups on either side, right? So black will probably want to settle the upper side first, and now white can play a pincer, right? This is, of course, the more advanced way of playing, right? You're playing off of 2 dead stones here, right? You're putting pressure on black, saying, if you don't respond here, it's not a good idea. Then white will enclose black very easily if black owes a move here. Or if black adds a move here, which is very, very slow, then once again, white will be very happy to play on the outside, right? But if black escapes, then white will need to figure out a way, right, to continue to put pressure on this black group. So that'll be harder to pull off for most amateur players, right? And what's the aji here, right? So of course, white has moves like this, very big endgame move, something like this, right? And if white wants to extend liberties, right, then it's going to be a straight 3 pattern, right? Straight 3 dead pattern, but white is potentially resilient, right? You can capture here and maybe start a ko, and when black runs short on liberties on the outside, black might be in trouble, right? So this is the idea, right, for number 3, right, if black responds this way. So which one do you prefer as black in this situation? I would recommend this for most amateur players, right? Even if you add a move here, this is still fine, I think, for black to play this way, right? You can still break out, kind of challenge the wall here on the outside. It's not 100% solid. So that's the so-called trick move. Nothing too fancy, I think. You don't need to be really nervous about this, right? The intuitive move right here is also fine. Maybe there's another pattern we omitted, right? Capturing these 2 is good, but maybe the better move is actually capturing here. And white, once again, you have to keep up the pressure on these 2 stones, and black must capture, right? Black doesn't capture, then white can stand down. And these two stones are going to be in trouble, are going to be killed. So after this Hane, black must capture. And again, 5 and 7 are both dead. Don't even try to revive it, right? You're just going to have to crawl on the second line forever. So after this, once again, white just takes care of the cutting point on the outside. And it'll be something like this. White gets sente, and this is totally playable for both sides. White just shifts to the upper side. Right? The pattern is not as strong as the one we saw earlier with black capturing here. Right? If it's something like this, of course, white gets an even better pattern on the outside. Also note, right, you need to be careful here. Black should not connect here. If you connect, then you still owe a move on the inside, right? So connecting here will be very, very slow. Yeah, so that's number 3. That's one trick move that may or may not come up in your games. Maybe it will never come up, but it is just something that's nice to know. Another so-called trick move is this Hane on the outside, this Hane on the inside at the 3-3 point. And what about black just enclosing white, right? Because we've been talking about black enclosing white into the corner, right, and getting a strong wall on the outside. So white is number 4, not the optimal move here, right? That's a legitimate question we should ask, right? And after these exchanges, black needs to save this stone at D17, right? This is the key here. But how, right? If you connect here, if it's something like this, then the corner is already alive. So white gets sente, and there's still a cutting point on the outside sometime down the line. So AI would say this is good for white, right? Because the corner is also pretty comfortable, right? Even if you play this exchange, it's still going to be about 5 points at least. So this is not as good for black, right? Just trying to enclose white, because white is pretty comfortable, right? The corner territory is gone for black, and there's still a cutting point on the outside, so the wall is not perfect. What about this, right? This is slightly more forceful, right? This is really threatening to jump into the corner sometime down the line. So white should still play the attachment underneath at number 7, right? Just note that number 8, Hane on the inside doesn't exist because of this double Atari, and number 11, so that's not going to work, right? Otherwise, you're just sacrificing number 8 for nothing, right? So you can only play the Hane on the outside. And now what? Black can play this move, which guards against both of these cutting points. It's a pretty neat move, right? Doesn't matter if white captures one, the wall on the outside is still fairly strong, right? So it doesn't matter. And it protects against both cuts. And white can just add another move, right? If you don't add a move, then this way, white is going to be dead. This is not enough ice space. And the conclusion here is that it's also fine for white to play this way. Again, the corner, pretty big, right? There's even more points. And what about black's wall? Right? Of course, black should take sente if the corners are relatively open, if the sides are relatively open. Those are going to be more valuable. But of course, black still owes a move here, right? A couple of cutting points sometime down the line, maybe here as well, but no. Most likely, black will have to give up these 2 stones and get a wall on the outside like this. So, not great for black, because the wall still has flaws. So what's the trick move here? The trick move is this tiger's mouth, right? So this is the most interesting move here. So of course, white can play this way. It's not going to make a huge difference for amateur games, right? This is just very similar as the pattern we saw earlier, just with this exchange, right? So if you play number 7 and 6, but the subtle thing here, right? The subtle thing is that you're giving black a free eye here, right? In sente too, right? White still needs this move. Otherwise, this is going to be not enough eye space. So you're giving black this eye, and that means this cut sometime down the line will be weaker, right? So the whole point of cutting your opponent is to make sure that you can attack at least one of these groups. But if black can get a free eye like this, then this will make the cut less effective, right? Sometime down the line. So that is why making this exchange is not good for white, because it gives black this extra eye, right? If white doesn't play this exchange, then black does not get a real eye, right? Or half a real eye here. So that makes a big difference for any kind of fight that stems from this cut, right? So that's the subtlety, right? If you run this through AI is going to tell you the results, but how do we interpret that, right? So I think that is one way that we can interpret that, because if you add this move, if you play this exchange, then you're not going to benefit. So what should white do instead in this situation? What about this? Something like this. If you, once again, play this, this is where number 6 is such a potent move, right? Now black can play this Hana and number 10, very, very good shape for black, first of all, and second of all, white does not have enough ice space to live. But of course, white can cut here, right? Threatening to capture number 8 and capture this, right? This is a connect and die situation on the outside. But black can actually sacrifice one of these stones, right? Save number 8, make sure white doesn't have enough ice space, and this is actually very difficult for white to proceed. If you play something like this, then black will connect. White has to connect out by capturing this stone, and white is not alive. So white will be attacked this way, and black can keep building on the upper side here, on the left side here. This is not viable, not okay for white, right? So if you try some of these other moves, this is also not okay. This is even fewer liberties, and white has to play through this ko, right? This is also not okay, right? Black would just enclose white. So what should white do? Well, white should actually just extend out and start this fight. And this is going to be a tough fight. AI says white is okay, it's playable. It's about 40% when the corners are empty. But I think this will be very, very hard for amateur players to pull off, because white is in 3 pieces, the corner is not alive, and then the other 2 groups are just these 2 stones. And if you look at black, the only group that black needs to worry about is the one in the center, but it's doing better than 11 and 13, right? These 2 white stones are too short on liberties, right? So this is going to be a really tough fight for white on the outside, and the corner will most likely be sacrificed, right? You can maybe keep playing on the outside, something like this, making this exchange first to see if black spends a move here to kill you. Maybe black will just play on the outside, right? The life and death here is actually not as big as any fight on the outside, right? So it's going to get complicated. It's not going to be good for white, especially if you're an amateur player. So what should white do instead in this situation if you're not willing to just settle on this extra exchange? The solution is actually to cut on the outside first, right? So the idea here is that these 3 stones on the corner can be sacrificed, but white will sacrifice them in a more efficient manner, right? If you play here, the idea is that this is just not a good shape, right? This is not a good situation that white finds itself in. So if you cut here first, then black can only play something like this on the outside, and white will be able to continue building on the outside, right? That's the idea. And black must keep extending. If you do not extend, then white will be able to enclose black this way. And black still owes a move on the inside, right? The inside is actually quite resilient. So see? So white will get 13, 15, and 17, right? Super strong wall. And white will also get 19, right? And black does owe a move on the inside because of all the aji on the inside, right? If black ignores it, then white can simply play at 21, 23. This is 4 liberties, a lot. It's also threatening to, make ice space, so black most likely have to play at number 24, which is not even occupying a liberty. Otherwise, I can play something like this, and this will be a Seki, right? This is not killable for black, right? So lots of trouble for black on the inside, and white gets a super strong wall on the outside. So that should be the idea, right? Again, a little hard to pull off as amateur players, but that's the idea. But what about black playing here? So if this ladder favors white, white can play number 11 right away. If not, this ladder favors black, then white can play the Hane first, forceful move, and then play this Atari. So it seems like black will get a Panuki on the outside, but this is actually okay, right? White is alive on the corner, and whites can focus on the fight on the left side. So it gets a little complicated. If you're interested, you can run this through AI on your own and see what happens. But this is the basic idea, right? So as soon as black plays and number 10, and now number 8, right? Now whites can play this move, right? And black cannot connect here, right? Otherwise, this would be the equivalent of whites cutting here first and black playing at number 8, right? This is a terrible exchange for black, these two moves. So that's the idea. Cut here first. Of course, if black just captures something on the inside like this, then white should just play on the outside. There's still a lot of aji. These 3 white stones are still pretty resilient, right? So black eventually will all move on the inside. And this is totally playable for white. Just having a relatively strong flexible shape on the outside. Black takes the corner territory, which it already had to begin with, and this is totally fine, right? So the situation to avoid, right, is this, right? That's the trick for number 6, because with number 10, white is not alive, and even with this connect and die, white is still not alive, and this is a very bad shape for white. White will come under attack, right? So as long as white avoids that pattern, right? If you're an amateur player, just play this extra exchange. Maybe you probably won't cut here anyway sometime down the line, right? So that's not going to matter, and you'll be fine, right? If you're more advanced, of course, try this cut and see what happens. It's going to be pretty interesting, especially with all the aji you can use after sacrificing these 3 white stones on the corner. So that's it for the large knight enclosure. If you have more questions, of course, I'm happy to add videos and show you more variations, but these are all the main variations that might come up in games for now. As always, thank you for following this channel, and I'll see you in the next video.